Welcome to today's webinar on maximizing practice value and the role that marketing plays in dental practice acquisitions. My name is Michael Antozzi. I am the Director of Practice Growth Consulting here with MyAdvice. And it's my distinct honor and pleasure to also introduce my Spanish counterpart, Miguel Morales. He is the Director of Investment Banking over at Skytale Group. We're going to just give this another minute for folks to come on in here for today. Really excited to talk to Miguel just in terms of getting some insights from him and what he is seeing on the M&A side with dental practice transitions, and obviously the role that what we do here with MyAdvice plays in terms of really driving more of that practice valuation. For those, just to kind of get some housekeeping items out of the way first, this webinar will be recorded as well as distributed as well too. So if you can't join in with us live, no big deal. You will be getting a recording of this. We will also invite Miguel and I invite you to submit any questions that you might have while we are going to be presenting for the good part of this webinar. If there are some questions that you might have as both of us are speaking or presenting, please feel free to put them into the chat and we will be able to get them at the end. So let's dive in here. Miguel, if you don't mind, would love just a bit of an introduction, if you wouldn't mind, for our audience here for you.
Sure. Thank you. Pleasure to be here and excited to chat. I feel like we have some very good topics for discussion that are quite timely, just given the state of the markets. I'm Miguel Morales. I'm a director at Skytale here in the investment banking group, which covers and so we're a healthcare focused investment bank, and we are focused on healthcare services, mergers and acquisitions. I have over 10 plus years of investment banking experience and have been focused exclusively in the healthcare services space. Previously, I was at Houlihan Lokey, where I was focused on dental almost exclusively, and where we had, I think, probably one of the top dental groups on the street during my time there. Spent most of my time at Houlihan and prior to that Baird on larger private equity to private equity transactions in the dental and multi-site healthcare space. So if you think about a lot of the platforms that are sold, we did a lot of those transactions. I came to Skytale to help lead the dental efforts and open up other verticals as well. But one of the main reasons I came to Skytale is to work more with founders as clients versus purely private equity clients, which I find personally more rewarding, but also the ability to provide value to our clients is much deeper and greater there. And quite frankly, feel like we have a lot more fun too doing that. So the goal, at Skytale is like we've hired a number of investment bankers like myself who have been previously more at the middle market and upper end of the market to help provide a level playing field for founders as they negotiate being acquired or partnering with private equity. And so far, it's been a great start. We have a number of opportunities coming in 2025.
Yeah, I've gotten to know Skytale speaking at different various meetings that I've met you guys at, both dentistry as well as in the aesthetic space as well too. So I can tell you guys are a really fantastic group.
Thank you.
So yeah, Miguel, thank you for that introduction. I'll just kind of go next just to give the audience a preview as to who I am as well as the background here with MyAdvice. So my name is Michael Antozzi. I'm the Director of Practice Growth Consulting with MyAdvice. We have been around since 1998, and very simply, we serve the fee-for-service practice. We have a very heavy presence, though, within dentistry. I've presented at many different meetings from AAID, AACD. We work a lot with the LVI doctors, with neuromuscular dentistry. I'm even married to the world's most evil dental hygienist as well, too. So I feel like this is a space that I live in both professionally as well as personally. But really, our goal as an organization is really about, really revenue generation and new lead acquisition. So getting patients to the door and getting the phone to ring, really through having a well-structured and well-fortified marketing strategy. And I say that word intentionally, strategy, is just simply because a lot of practice owners do not execute a strategy properly. And we're going to kind of maybe get into a little bit more as to what that actually means. But, with my 15 years of consulting experience in this space, time and time and time again, we generally see practice owners spending much more on their marketing and seeing a lower ROI. And especially that type of business inefficiency really does not only just help that works to detract lead acquisition on the here and now and limits how you're generating revenue now. But long-term perspective, it really does have a role in terms of how it's presenting more value into your practice. And so that's what Miguel and I are really going to start to get into talking a little bit more about here today. So Miguel, before we dive in here, I would just like to know from you if you can help to give us just maybe the audience. I think a good place for us to start is just getting an update in what's happening in the dental M&A market right now. I mean, what are you seeing that's happening now? What's affecting practices now? Do you have any forecasts or what you trends that you might be expecting to see in 2025? We'd love to hear, what your thoughts are just in terms of the M&A market right now for dentistry.
Sure. It's a great question. And, for some context, I was recently in Austin at the ADSO Next Level Conference, which is a mid-market conference where a lot of the top CEOs of the larger platforms attend and give their thoughts on the market and what they foresee as well. So I'll do my best to, one, share their sentiment because I think it's good to have, the ideas of many minds as well as my own thoughts, just given my experience in the space. So I think if you were to take a step back and look like, where we sit today, almost at the end of 2024, obviously in 2020 we had COVID, 2021 we had a run up, on the growth side, just given a lot of patients had their treatment rescheduled for 2021. And then 2022, you had what many call like the Great Resignation, where the demand was still there from the patient side, but maybe you were running short on hygienists or staff, just given there were a large number of resignations in the space. And then you look at 2023, it was about right sizing the business or starting to come out of that those challenges of 2022. And then 2024 has been more of the same. You've seen a number of the larger platforms either recapitalize or attempt to go out to market and then do a debt raise. And so what that has done is that it's reset the hold period for a lot of these platforms. And while it's reset the hold period, so they have another 5 years, 3 to 4 to 5 years till they exit, it's also armed them with quite a bit of dry powder to go out and execute acquisitions out in the space. So if you think of like folks may have heard of the MB2 Dental debt deal, a preferred deal that was done by Warburg Pincus. So that what that essentially does is that gives them more dry powder as well to go out and execute additional acquisitions and also potentially get ready for an IPO, which would be the first in the market, and not to predict that they will do that, but I know that there are a number of the larger players that have their sights set on doing an IPO as the capital markets tend to open up. And I think why that's relevant, kind of at the lower end of the market or the lower size of the market, is that a lot of these platforms, they need to as they continue to grow, they need to find new ways to continue to exit to larger and larger sets of investors. And so right now, if you think about it, there's somewhat of a bottleneck at the top because there hasn't been an IPO. And so what that will do is once there's an IPO, it will be like a pressure release valve, so to speak. So you'll have the top end of that market start to clear up. And you'll have case studies where some of the larger private equity platforms will be able to say, okay, MB2 or whoever else, has IPO'd. So I know that I could do the same and I can exit to capital markets, because that's one of the first things investors think of is like, okay, I'm going to buy this platform, but who am I going to sell it to? And right now, for the larger platforms, who am I going to sell it to has quite frankly been a challenge. And so having this case study out there is going to be very beneficial all the way throughout the market. Setting our sights now, that's where we're at today. A lot of the platforms have been internally focused on revenue growth. Like Michael, you'll appreciate this. they continue to focus on organic growth, right? And what's, the biggest lever there is obviously marketing, and providing a high quality patient experience. And so as they look to 2025, a lot of these firms are going to be dusting off their acquisition playbooks and starting to focus again externally. And so they'll be looking to acquire practices. And I think just given the number of DSOs out there, it's going to be a really good time to, if you're thinking about going to market or even like thinking about preparing to go to market, it's a good idea to start, having those conversations early and thinking about that, because 2025 and 2026, I predict are going to be some pretty high volume years for the dental M&A market.
I'm just curious to know, what do you, when you say higher volume, what's driving that?
I think it's going to be one, that they've reset their hold periods, and then two, they've been flush with cash, and then three, a lot of them have improved their balance sheets. So a good, just given the interest rates, a lot of folks were trying to lower their cost of debt, right, or the amount of debt that they were servicing. And so what they were doing is, instead of putting that extra cash towards acquisitions, it was being used to either pay down debt or frankly, just pay the interest on their debt. And so now that they're in much healthier financial positions, and they're starting to see their own growth continue to trend up, they're going to be focused on acquisitions, and just given the record number of DSOs out there looking to consolidate, it creates this very healthy competition among them. And so, that only benefits the seller.
We've seen a lot of consolidation as well too, uh, with regards to practices, merging, with each other and things of that nature. And I will tell you, I mean, it's funny that you say that, just in terms of how the volume is increasing, because this is something that we've seen from a trend perspective, that, what are practices really starting to do to differentiate themselves from the competition? Because gosh, you can walk down the street and it's almost like I see a Starbucks is what I'm drinking here right now, as well as a dental practice right next to it. And it seems like wherever you go, you're just finding much more of that locally based competition. I'm curious to know, with just because of that acceleration and that pace, what are some of the things that you might be seeing that practices can help to differentiate themselves when they're in a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, I would say if you look at, and this has been the case for a while, it is still the case today, the number one metric that these consolidators look at by far is your same store growth, right? What is your organic growth of the practice on a year over year basis? So this is a nice, segue into, Michael, a lot of what you do and your team does very well, which is, how can you make sure that you're optimizing, or in some cases starting a professionalized marketing program within the practice. And so they look at that, because what the same store growth represents is you have a healthy underlying business model, right? So what that means is you're keeping your patients. Patient retention is huge. They will look at that metric. And then you not only are servicing your clients, your patients well, you're also able to acquire patients. So you must be doing something right, whether it's word of mouth, or you have, strong marketing presence, or, you're staying on top of your Google reviews. You have strong brand strength and reputation in the local community. All those things play out. And so that same store growth metric, I do harp on it, but it is the most important piece that you want to have before getting in front of investors.
And I think that the main takeaway, and I don't know if you see this a lot with any of the clients that you talk to, but when it comes to the marketing perspective, not enough practices, I would say, are really understanding their metrics. And this is even a conversation that I have all the time, is that even if you're, you have your dental practice and maybe it's a generational dental practice, even if you're not thinking about selling in time, you should act as if that is
Right.
going to always happen. And understanding your data, understanding your KPIs, understanding, you talked about with things like Google reviews. Is it correct to say that like private equity do you guys actually look at metrics like Google reviews when you're looking at the valuation of a practice? Or what are some of the
Absolutely. It's one of the easiest check the boxes. And in fact, I'll even do that for our sell side clients, our clients that we're bringing to market. If they say like, hey, I want to know if this platform that I'm going to join is a good fit for us. And they'll say, okay, hey, I'll have my team, we'll run an aggregate search of that platform's Google review, right? So these are the type of doctors that you would partner with as well. So it's so important because it's one of the first things people look at. So private equity will, and in fact, we'll put it in our marketing materials. It will say, it'll be their like, aggregate score of 4.8 or 4.9 for, over 300 Google reviews or something like that, because it is such an important metric, that to be able to showcase that to buyers is key because it's one of the first lines of defense of do patients enjoy going there? You providing good quality care? People like to voice their opinion even more so when they've had a bad experience. At least that's you would probably know more about that than I would, Michael, as far as like what drives people to voice their opinion. But in my experience, it feels like if someone's disgruntled, they're going to go and write about it, on a review site. So if you have little to no of those, I think it's a great sign.
Any dental practice that I talk to will always tell me that their primary lead sources are word of mouth patients. And I think that there's a fallacy in the market that a lot of practice owners have is that because they're heavily reliant on referrals and word of mouth, that they don't need to market or they don't need to worry about marketing. And that's absolutely, I would say that's antithetical, actually. If you are word of mouth driven, you still need marketing, but you just do it in more efficient ways. But, from the marketing side of things, when we start to look at, really the cost of acquisition of patients, generally speaking, your acquisition cost of a patient is going to be about 5 to 9 times higher than it is to retain a patient. Now, with any dental practice, obviously, it has to be a balance of what are you doing to retain the patients that you have, and then what are you doing to also acquire new into your door as well, too. Being married to my wife, who is a dental hygienist, I can recall very specifically she was working at a practice one time, and she was really kind of grinding very, very hard. The doctor was constantly on her about getting, send me new cases of patients. And the problem that her practice was actually having is that there were no new cases to diagnose because all their patients were really well maintained with their health. And so it's always going to be a balance of, what are you doing to obviously keep the folks that you've, retained and you're doing a good job of servicing that cohort, but then obviously balancing that with new. But, from a metricing side, kind of going back to what I had mentioned, is that the cost of acquisition are about 5 to 9 times higher. And so if you're thinking about this, knowing that Google reviews is the first thing that referral-driven patients will see, it does placate a lot into your Google visibility as well, too. When we talk about that nebulous word SEO and search engine optimization, and how your website's getting ranked on Google, Google reviews very much do placate into your visibility, but the more that you're generating them, it actually lowers your cost of acquisition. Because what it's doing is that it's giving patients much more incentive just to say, yes, like this is the place that I would want to go to. And so the more populous that they are, the more consistent that you are in generating them. And I would also say as well too, that's probably the thing that from a metricing perspective, not enough practices are really doing well enough. Um, Generally speaking, you take the cases of the clients that you might be seeing, or how many patients that your hygiene department might have, add all those up. Generally, like any practice wants to be hitting around a 5 to 10% return rate of new Google reviews compared to that weekly volume or that monthly volume of patients. And so, again, this very much has a very strong role, not only just in terms of converting more of your now, but as obviously Miguel is talking about, is that these are really metrics that private equity does look at when they're looking to evaluate the valuation of a practice.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, Michael, what have you seen? If someone says like, "Hey, I've had a few bad knocks on my Google review. I'm not sure they're legit." Like, what are some of the things that I'm curious, like what you do for, or help clients out with to mitigate that?
It's a great question. Um, First, I think we want to set an expectation, a standard that Google reviews are the gold standard. They don't operate with nefarious business practices like a Yelp might or a Better Business Bureau might. Really Google's incentive is that it wants to be seen as the place to go get trustworthy information. And so it's going to show the good, the bad, the ugly. Now, in terms of like the bad review, um, and let's just put this out there, it will happen. Okay. Patients expect excellence. Perfection is a very hard thing to attain. And actually, there's some logic that if a practice is rated as a 5.0 on Google, which is a perfect score, it's almost kind of like, well, what are you trying to really do to influence that review score? So it's actually funny because 5.0s tend to be a little bit less trustworthy. But when you're at a 4.8 to a 4.9, that really tends to be your sweet spot. So, for those of you who might be watching this, a bad review is not a bad thing. An occasional bad review here and there is not going to hurt you. It actually could actually work to drive much more of your trust. Now, with that being said, though, as well, too, uh, if it's a bad review, you want to be very careful about it. If it's something that, your practice really screwed up on, the patient really had a legitimate complaint or a concern, maybe if it was about being late or, staffing or whatever that might be, I would say you want to own that review. You want to acknowledge that publicly, say to that patient, hey, we really appreciate the feedback here. Can you please give us a call? We would love to make this right for you. It's a way of showing your humanity. It's a way of showing your vulnerability. It's a way of showing other prospective patients that will read that you actually do care. Now, look, I mean, if there's the review that happens, just go out there where it might be, say, just, a 1-star review, but there's no feedback and it clearly looks like it was written from a spammy account. There are ways and methods where you can actually report that review to Google, and Google gives you about 9 different options of just why is this review not valid for them to consider. And generally speaking, for those types of situations, it's good to maybe report that, or maybe have your staff or your wife or your husband also report that as well too, because generally the more people that will see that, Google could then say, all right, well, this is obviously something that's not quite legitimate. Um, it was actually really funny. I had a client one time who was uh, served this family, the mom, the dad, the kids, and had seen, the grandparents and everything else to that effect. And one day, mom came in with her kids, and as soon as she left, like the very next day, this practice received a scathing review from this mother.
Wow.
And really just talking about, staff were jerks, and the whole experience was really painful. And my client was like, what the heck? Like, I've seen you guys for so many years. And it really threw him off guard because he felt like he really had developed a close relationship with this patient. Anyway, 6 months later, they come back again, and I mean, this has just been on this guy's mind. And so he said to his staff, like, listen, I want, roll out the red carpet for these folks. Mom's coming in with her kids, like, make sure that they are really given the white glove service, because it was affecting him. It was affecting him personally. So anyway, he goes on to, the mom comes in with the kids, and they're all kind of wrapped up and they're about to leave. And my client says, hey, was everything okay here? And she's kind of looking at him dumbfounded, and she's like, yeah, like, of course. I mean, everything's always great. She goes, what are you talking about? And he said, well, like, I couldn't help but notice that you left me this awful review, like the last time that you were in here. And I got to tell you, it really hurt my heart. I mean, it affected me personally. And I just felt like we've had such a great relationship throughout these years. And I can't believe that you would say the things that you said. And she looked at my client, she goes, I didn't say any of those things. What are you talking about?
Wow.
So then they look down at the kid, and the kid looks up and he's like, it hurt. So kid, for whatever reason, had a bad experience, took out his mom's phone, and then he wrote a bad review. And she knew nothing about it. And my client was holding on to this for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And so, again, that's kind of just a funny anecdotal story, but basically, bottom line is that I don't want for practice owners that are watching this, the way that you mitigate bad reviews is getting in front of them by having methods where you're always pumping that profile full with great reviews. And again, you want to be doing that very consistently. So that's a great way of really being able to stay in front of a problem because eventually it will happen. You just want to make sure that you have built up enough of a foundation where when those headwinds do come, that you have enough stockpile of great feedback to be able to combat that.
Great. That's great. That's a great anecdote there.
So, we're talking about, obviously like the aspect of marketing and things of that nature. So I'm curious to know, when we talk about some of these metrics and things of that nature, um, I'm curious to know, Miguel, in your experience, because you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, do you have any examples of how marketing investments have directly impacted a practice either when they're looking to become acquired or if they're looking to obviously find an exit strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give one specifically that was pretty recent. And so one, they have recently started their online social media and SEO initiatives, and this was a platform, and they had, call it 40 practices. And so they had started it, probably call it, 6 to 7 months prior to us preparing them to go to market. And what they were already able to show within the data that they were capturing around their marketing initiatives was that they were, in fact, driving an increase in patients to the practices on a healthy percentage basis. And it was those that they had hired like an actual marketing person and an outsourced team to help them with this. And so what that allowed us to do for them or with them is as they thought about the growth of the business on a percentage year-over-year basis, we were able to more confidently underwrite growth into their forecast for the following year and through the end of that year as well. So that had a direct impact on the view of EBITDA that that the sponsor, the financial sponsor, the private equity group that eventually acquired them, it had a direct impact on how they viewed the EBITDA of that business, not only through the end of that year that they would use it to apply their multiple to, but also as the forecast was built out, because then they could think, okay, as we're acquiring these other practices, we can underwrite this marketing plan, going towards those practices as well, and you can drive incremental growth. So I think as you think about it from the perspective of someone who maybe has a single location or a handful of locations or 10, 15, it's directly applicable. It's starting a marketing program and showing its effectiveness, and then the data capture, right, of that and showing the impact of the campaigns and your initiatives will directly impact the growth story of the business, which is so central to the acquisition.
Yeah, we see this a lot as well too when we talk about the minutia of tracking data. One of the things that we do with our clients is we have design strategy calls, which either happen monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly. But it's really important, especially with a lot of what you're doing to drive traffic to your website. I'm not just talking about like saying website traffic, but pages, specific pages on your website, for example. How are you measuring growth, quarter after quarter or, month after month, whatever that might be? One of the biggest things that we have seen in terms of a marketing shift over the last 2 years, and I think that this is definitely something that does placate a lot into how your practice is going to continue to drive valuation is AI, because that's a big hot button buzzword right now that we've seen a lot of shifts and changes in the Google sphere because of what Google is doing to respond to artificial intelligence and AI. So, how does that relate to your website? Do you have not just like keyword driven content on your website, but is the content on your website actually adding value to the actual searcher? So, generally, one of the best ways that we find that you can go about doing that is having a lot of questions and answers about the common things that your patients are always asking you. And are you putting that onto those landing pages of your website? Um, that's what we call Google's helpful content update, and we can certainly get into that in a little bit. But basically, being able to then say, all right, are we now kind of shifting some of our content strategy to some of these newer methods that Google wants to see? And are you measuring, how that content then might be helping to add new growth opportunities to these particular pages on your website? And are you studying that? So, having that type of collaborative relationship with your marketing company is going to be really, really important to start to drive some of these metrics that, companies that Skytale and Miguel really look at then to, evaluate what that underlying growth potential could be for a particular practice. And so, how I would certainly see a lot of marketing campaigns tend to fail from a metric perspective is very simply based around collaboration and partnership. I talk to so many practice owners where they tend to be in these marketing relationships where they feel like they're being told they have to tell their marketing company what to do, or they feel like they have to abstract data out of them. And that's just a recipe for being very stagnant in terms of your overall your marketing growth, which obviously that helps to, does play a strong role in terms of how you're going to continue to drive much more valuation into your practice. And I'm actually curious, Miguel. If let's just say I'm a dental practice and I'm getting into like the sales side right now. Generally speaking, like what does the timeline look like? And how early should practices really start to be preparing themselves for a sale if they know that that's what they want to be doing?
That's a great question. So if someone came to us and said, "Hey, I need to sell my practice like tomorrow," right? And I'll just give two extremes. Like the transaction will take, we'll start preparing, the following day. It takes about one to 1.5 months to get all the materials ready, the financial model, the marketing materials. We like to do heavy work up front to prepare before we would actually go out to market, doing our own internal diligence on the business. So we are catching any red flags that we as many red flags as we can catch, so we can either work to address them or work to mitigate them in the sale. So that's about 1.5 months. And then time out to market is, I'd call that about 2 months, where you are there's discussions with buyers and then you find a partner. So, let's call that 3.5 months total time. And then the actual closing diligence and negotiation, that's another, call it 3.5 months. So I think on average, you're looking like 6 to 7 months, just on the conservative side. Can it go faster? Yes. Can it go longer? Ideally not, because usually that means it's not something is not going ideal. But yeah, I'd say kind of that 6 to 7 months from like, okay, we're starting now, like until closing and the check hits your account. That's what that would look like. And then to answer your question around if, like someone's thinking about or has any designs on selling in the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 years, I think it's always good to start preparing. Thought you made a really good comment early, is like you should always think about like, what if someone's going to come diligence my business, right? Like, and for a sale, what if I did have to sell it tomorrow? Like, it's good to have that view of like, what are some of the check the boxes that I should think about, and they're not incremental to how you should think about running the business. In fact, they're value add. There's a reason why private equity, I know sometimes they can there's different views of private equity, some positive, some negative. Um, but there's a reason why they look for these things, and it's because it'll demonstrate a healthy business model. So it never is a bad thing to look at, what are some of the metrics or things that I should be looking at if I were to sell, because it's going to improve your business either way. It's not like something that's going to detract from
It,
adding value to your business.
right.
And then I think the converse of that is, which plays well into it, is you should always, some people say, you know, should I do X, Y, Z because I'm thinking about selling my business? To a certain extent, yes, but you should always be thinking about how you're going to grow your business, how you're going to, provide quality, high patient experience. Those are all things that you should be doing anyways, but yes, especially for that. So, we always love to have conversations as early on as possible because we can give you the checklist of like, here's some of the things that you should start thinking about. We can start putting folks in touch with people like you, Michael, who can help them with their marketing programs or just a number of different things that you can do to add value and pull levers before a sale process that will add real value and real dollars to you and also help you find the right partner. A lot of times it's not like who's going to write me the biggest check. It's like, who do I actually want to partner with? And has the same values and culture that I have.
Miguel, I'm curious to know when you start to do some of your due diligence, what are the red flags that you generally see? And, I think that it would be helpful for folks to at least kind of understand that now. Again, kind of getting that mindset of like, even if you're not thinking about selling, you should act as if that will happen. Like, so I'm curious to know, like, when you evaluate, what are some of those red flags that you just tend to see are more common for practices?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the things to focus on too is not only patient retention, but also your staff retention, right? What does that look like?
Hmm.
That's a big, you know, you gave a great comment on it costs more to acquire a patient than to keep a patient, right? And so I think the same is true with employees, right? Like if you have to let someone go or they leave because they view it's a bad culture, like going out and hiring to replace them can oftentimes be expensive too. And then there's disruptions to the business. So focusing on that staff retention is a good one. Two, I would say, oh, and obviously I know I've harped on this a bit, but it's the growth of the business. What does that look like, right, on a year-over-year basis? I would say two, having your compliance in order, like that's a really easy check the box that you should have. And then two, just your general reputation and brand and the overall patient experience. What does it look like when someone walks into your dental practice, right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
is it
I,
is it dated or is someone dark? Like what's the lighting like? Just like small things like that that can add a big difference because they will go and visit your practice.
Absolutely. Speaking on the retention side of things and the role that marketing plays, you know, uh, guys, websites are so important just in terms of that initial first impression. You could be the most well-trained dentist in the world, the most experienced, but really, if the vibe of your website doesn't speak like, hey, this is a practice that looks current, that looks modern, that looks as if that they're going to invest well, um, we've not only seen that has a degradation in terms of your new patient acquisition rates, but also too, it could also affect how patients might perceive I'm sorry, how potential employees might want to work for you. Like I would encourage you to think about like when's the last time you've ever gone to like a really high-end restaurant? I mean, did you check out the website before you went there? You probably did. And if the restaurant didn't make you feel like you're going to have a great dining experience, is that the place that you would really want to go to? So much about how, and as much as this might hurt to say, is that medicine has become much more commoditized in this way. We look at reviews to judge efficacy. We look at a website to think about that this is a great practice for us to go to. But these really do have real business applications in terms of how you're driving your future equity, how you might be retaining your patients as well too. I mean, From the retention side of things, one thing that I can very much speak to is to how great is the social media presence for a practice? What Miguel has been talking about here, as well as myself, is that things like your website, your reviews, they really do have a strong impact in terms of generating that lead. But once that patient has become converted and now they're in your door, and what are you doing to really engage that relationship? And that's really where having a good, strong social media presence can really help you. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean, you have to be like the silly doctor and, dancing and singing in front of the camera and being something that you're authentically not. But, are you putting out educational based content that can really help to start to build that relationship even with patients before they start to come into your door. Um, you know, uh, Patients that tend to have a longer lead cycle generally mean that they're evaluating you more. Where, hey, if you're putting out some really good social media content for anybody to see, it tends to start to build that relationship quicker and faster, so that way consultations are shorter and the patients are in the chair a little bit quicker. And I'm sure that those are all metrics that, again, you look at, Miguel, in terms of just measuring the business efficacy side of things. And so all these pieces, really matter. You have to really start to build them brick by brick. Um, so
Absolutely.
anyway,
And I think what has to be exciting for practice owners is that this is all very like this is all something that you can somewhat control with partners like Michael, right? Like these are things that if you want to turn on that marketing engine, you really can. You can really go for it. You can with the right dedication and execution. It's something that you can drive and add immediate value to your business. So I think it should not be viewed as something that's um, a big hill to climb, but it's something that like, hey, this is a great opportunity for me. It's in my control, it's in my hands, and it's something that I can start doing, but tomorrow, right? So that has to be feel pretty empowering, I imagine, for a lot of practices.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think the thing I would also say as well, it's just about building your team, right? Trying to really build a lot of this infrastructure and this value-based practice. It's not something that you can obviously do on your own. Having partners like MyAdvice that can guide you on the marketing side of things, having partners like Skytale, which can really start to work with you and understand your business and really your goals and your vision. Miguel, I love that you had mentioned that you're just, you're really in this to help out more of like the independent business owner at the beginning of this conversation. And I think that that's, you know, being able to stand for that, for not the little guy, so to speak, but I think you know what I mean. It's just like the independent business owner that wants to obviously, create more wealth for their family or whatever that might be. And having folks like you that are really going to start to work with them over time is invaluable. So, um, we're almost here at our time. So, Miguel, any final thoughts or parting words that you feel like would be helpful for this webinar here today?
Yeah, no, one would like to thank all those that attended and those who will be listening, after the live session here. But I really think, there's a lot of folks out there that can help you thinking about optimizing your practice, whether it's on the marketing side, like what you do, Michael, or if it's, preparing to sale. We're always happy to have those conversations. Even if you think it's too early, we're always happy to have a conversation and give you our candid thoughts and tell you what we think are some of the best steps. But yeah, I would also say that it's an exciting time in the market. So if you have any thoughts on either acquiring or going to market yourself, that you start having those conversations early on, because the market, what it tends to happen is what we saw in 2021, the market did get pretty flooded with opportunities. So you don't want to be at the end of the stack, so to speak, of opportunities that come. So it's good to have those conversations early and start optimizing your business. So it's an exciting time.
I cannot agree more. My grandfather always used to say, "Don't let work sit." And so, if you know that those opportunities are there, if you're obviously thinking about these conversations, it doesn't mean you have to make an action right now, but it's good to start to build those relationships and build your team and network for when you are ready to take that action. So, um, this is Miguel's contact information. So, Miguel, if people want to get in touch with you, this is where they can find you. And so again, if you're thinking about selling your practice, even if it's not now, I would encourage you guys just to start to think about have those conversations. You can get in touch with Miguel here. This is his email as well as cell phone. On the marketing side, again, if your practice is, if you're wanting to really position your marketing strategy for that future valuation, start to really get more of your metrics in alignment as well to an understanding how your strategy really needs to be adapting in light of a lot of these Google changes. Would certainly love to be able to talk with you as well too. This is my email as well, cell phone. The QR code on the left-hand side. Book a complimentary consultation with me one-on-one. If you're not quite ready for that though, you can always follow me on Instagram. I'm sure over the next few weeks as well too, we'll probably be parsing out some of this great content from Miguel, and I'll be posting that to my feed as well too. So. With all that being said, Miguel, thank you so much for your time again.
You,
It's a pleasure having you on here today, and I hope you look forward to seeing you around the hall soon.
yeah, sounds great. You can tell the marketing person is because you have the QR code. I love it.
We'll talk offline. I'll get you one as well too for the next
All right.
time.
That sounds good. Thanks all. Have a good
All
one.
right. Take care. Bye bye.